Okay, legends, we are back for another episode. Today we're going to talk about what is the best cardio training tool to improve our performance on this dirt bike. So maybe this will confirm what you already know. Maybe it'll give you some clarity to fine-tune your own cardio training for your off-road racing. So number one, let's get straight into it. You hear a lot of people say that you've got to be able to hold your heart rate at 170 on a bicycle, whether that be a road bike, mountain bike, take your pick. They'll say that because our average heart rate is 170 when we're racing across country on this dirt bike, that we need to be able to hold our heart rate at 170 on a road cycle. Anyone with a basic understanding of physiology will know why that is false. Not to say that's not a great goal to have, or it's not necessarily a bad way to train your aerobic system. Like, it's a measure of intensity, being able to hold your heart rate at 170 on a road cycle for an effort. However, when you understand how the heart works, you can see that holding our heart rate at 170 on a road cycle, or even this mountain bike here, is a very different environment within our body to what we get faced with on this dirt bike. So how I like to think of it, simply broken down, is the heart kind of works like a pump. Very reductionist view, I know, but if you can sort of wrap your head around it, two main things that are going to place demand on our heart. One is oxygen turnover, the other is muscular tension. So the bicycle example, there's a very low level of tension, but there's a high rate of oxygen turnover. The quads are working in a cyclical motion, so they're demanding a high oxygen turnover. The opposite of that would be doing something like a really heavy barbell back squat, or even a wall sit, when there's more a slower, even an isometric contraction like the wall sit. The muscle's contracting, so it's demanding that oxygen. However, it's not relaxing, it's holding an isometric contraction, or it's holding that contraction for a longer time frame, as in the squat example. So when that happens, when a muscle is held under contraction, the blood can't return back to the heart as fast. So when that happens, there's an occlusion, like a restriction as such in the muscle. The heart has to beat harder and potentially take blood from other areas to keep pumping blood into that part of the body. So anyone with two eyeballs can see that when we ride a push bike compared to what we do on this dirt bike is very different. Yes, there is some cyclical motion when we ride a dirt bike. If we're wheeling through a set of whoops or coming into a set of braking bumps, there is some cyclical motion. There also is a lot of isometric-like contractions when we ride this dirt bike, whether that be standing in our attack position down a straight, maybe even sitting in our attack position coming out of a corner, holding our attack position when we're braking. You get my point. If you've ridden a dirt bike, especially off-road, you will know that in certain situations we have to hold positions for long periods of time. In between all of that, there is movement, of course. We are moving to and from these positions, absorbing braking bumps, absorbing acceleration chop, soaking up jumps, all of these things, going through rock gardens. So there's definitely movement in there. There is also a lot of isometric contraction going on. So that demand on the heart and the aerobic system, the respiratory system, is completely different when we ride this dirt bike compared to when we ride a bicycle. So what does that mean? Well, it just means that, again, like everything, our training in the gym, we're not trying to replicate what goes on this dirt bike. We're just trying to improve the physical qualities required to support the demands that we need to express on this dirt bike. The physical qualities, right? So a bicycle, great tool for developing their aerobic system. When we look at it though, it is, especially on a road cycle, like that's why I personally love mountain biking. Like, this is my e-bike. I also have a hardtail that I ride. especially on a road bike, we are using predominantly the lower body. Mountain biking, obviously, there's a bit more upper body and core comes into play depending on the terrain that we're riding. Something like the rower, as an example. Obviously, it's upper body as well. We're using the upper body. It's a little bit more, you could say, posterior chain dominant, where we're hinging a lot more, using the hamstrings, the glutes to extend. We're even getting that a little bit of flexion and extension through the spine, protraction, retraction of the scapulas and the shoulder blades. And our grip, we're also hanging on to that handle. So we're using our forearm muscles as well, which of course we use on the dirt bike. So does that mean that that's replicating what we do on the dirt bike? No, it just means that that's a great tool that is going to place our aerobic and respiratory system in an environment where it has to supply oxygen to not just the lower body, but also the upper body with varying movements and amounts of muscular tension. Compared to the bicycle, again, especially the road cycle option, a lot more lower body dominant, not having to send much blood to the upper body. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good tool for developing cardiac output, developing the aerobic system. However, you can see that it's different. It's different to what we do here. It's different to what we do on the rower. And of course, it's different to what we would do on an assault bike, because an assault bike is obviously pedaling, but it's also arms. So we're also using the upper body. We're getting that reciprocal nature and that rotation through the upper back, thoracic spine, and again, the scapulas and shoulders. So that is why I personally, if I had to pick an ideal scenario, it would be to have a variety of modalities. So then we're exposing our aerobic and our respiratory system to various environments, various oxygen demands, various movement patterns and orientations of the muscles, and various levels of muscular tension. So, of course, what I do also take into consideration for my clients, and what you would also want to take into consideration is, well, what's easily achievable for you to do consistently and frequently. So, lots of people love cycling. If you love cycling, if you love road cycling, then that's probably a good choice for you, because it means that you're going to get out and you're going to do it each week because you love it. I got plenty of clients that hate road cycling. Not hate it, but they're just not emotionally tied to it. It's not part of their identity. They couldn't care less. They just want to get fitter for riding dirt bikes. So in that case, they do some rowing, they do some assault bike, and they might do some running. That works really well for them to develop an elite level aerobic system. You might be like me. I love mountain biking. We've got a 50, 60K epic trail, like hundreds Ks of single track network, basically on our back doorstep here, that I can go riding in. I love mountain biking. So for me, I use my mountain bike. I do a little bit of rowing. I do a little bit of assault bike. And I do a little bit of running every now and then. I just like mixing it up. So another part of that variety, which you will no doubt have experienced and will understand, is how we have to breathe differently on each of these things. So on an assault bike, compared to a bicycle, compared to a rower. So again, to use the road bike, if you think of a road bike being in that position over a road bike, hunched over, upper back is completely expanded. The thoracic cavity, the rib cage is completely expanded. That is almost like an ideal scenario for us to be able to breathe really well, to be able to breathe deeply and fill our entire rib cage and our lungs up with air. That's almost like the perfect situation, or the easiest position that we could be in to be able to breathe. And of course, there's not much movement going on. Like the upper body's basically sort of in that position. All we have to focus on with the upper body is breathing. As opposed to your rowing machine, of course, we've got the upper body coming into play. There's a little bit of flexion, there's a little bit of hip hinge, there's a little bit of extension. So there's this constant movement through the rib cage, the hips, the upper and the lower back, and of course the upper body. So it's a different scenario, a different demand, and it's harder potentially, or just different to be able to breathe, to get our breathing in check, to be able to breathe deeply, to be able to breathe efficiently on this rowing machine compared to a bicycle, and then even compared to an assault bike. An assault bike's different again because it's a lot more quad dominant like a cycle, but it has also got the upper body, and we're getting the rib cage moving in that reciprocal nature. So again, it's just a different environment that challenges us to be able to breathe in that different environment with that different demand. So to me, it makes sense. Anyone that rides a dirt bike knows we get put in all sorts of positions on this thing and all sorts of dynamic movement, and for the most part it's completely random depending on the track we're riding and then how that track deteriorates through the race. So we need to be able to breathe in various different positions with various different levels of muscular tension, etc., etc. So in my mind, it makes sense that we wouldn't just want to train one modality for our cardio. And that's any of these. Like, you wouldn't just want to do every single part of your cardio on a rowing machine. Although honestly, I'd say the rowing machine, my bias would lead me to say that the rowing machine on its own would be a much better option than road cycling on its own. But you get my point. I wouldn't say it's an ideal scenario to just pick one. Lots of people like pump their tires up about road cycling like it's God's gift to off-road races aerobic capacity. I don't believe that personally. I believe you can take your pick. It just really matters what you can do consistently, what you can do frequently, and ideally we're getting a little bit of variation in there, so we're not just like developing the aerobic system and learning how to breathe in the one same position all the time. If we can mix that up, it's going to give us a broader range to be able to express that capacity of the aerobic and the respiratory system when we get on this dirt bike to race.